Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of CEO and Market Expert Interviews. I'm your host, Lucian. Most of you know me from Access Triangle Investor. Today, we are covering IsoEnergy, and I'm joined by Philip Williams, Chief Executive Officer and Director. Phil, as always, great to have you.
Yeah, great to see you, Lucian. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. Let's start with the current hot topic, and that is U.S. Senate-approved bill to ban Russian uranium imports. My question is, what do you think? How will this impact the market? And do you think that this is doable to cut all the Russian supply? I mean, since the US nuclear power plants imports are around 12% of their uranium is coming from Russia. What's your take?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's so good to have it finally approved. Obviously, we've been talking about it for a long time, so it's not new news, but it's an important step in the process. And on the ground, we've all been expecting this to come. And in the background, we've been talking to utilities all over the world as they get prepared. I mean, even obviously the U.S. utilities, but even other utilities are looking for Western sources of material. So I think it's great that it's here and it's going to have an impact. I think though that we do need to sort of set our expectations in terms of how quickly the utilities in the United States are going to be required to find material from non-Russian sources.
Yeah.
And that is going to take some time. And we know they're talking about waivers, and it will be a phased-in approach. But I do think that this will kickstart particularly domestic U.S. production. We're seeing it already. All the relevant players, including ourselves, are talking about bringing new production or old production, quite frankly, back on stream. And so this is the kind of fire that we need under that to get it going. So it's all very exciting.
Yeah, good point. Your company is very busy on all fronts with U.S. mine restarts, like you said. And you have the exploration program in the Eastern Athabasca Basin uranium properties. I want to touch first on the current exploration program in the Athabasca. How much work have you done there? What areas have been tested? And what are the first results telling you so far?
Yeah, sure. So we finished the winter drill program and put out a press release on that last week. And actually that press release was coincidentally timed with an analyst trip that we had up to the project. So we had half a dozen research analysts from various brokers, primarily in Canada, on the project. And you're starting to see some notes from those people explaining what they've seen. But we finished 2 drill programs, one at our Hawk project, one at our La Rock East around the Hurricane deposit. And really what we were doing, we were testing a new technique that we use to try to identify the alteration that surrounds uranium deposits in the basin. It's called ANT, right? And you're starting to see lots of other players are starting to use it.
Yeah.
And the reason they're doing it is because it works. So effectively, the ANT surveys show us the alteration halo around deposits. Now, the alteration signature is quite a lot bigger than the deposit itself. If you're familiar with the Hurricane deposit, it is, because it's so high grade, it's a very small footprint, and there's a plume of alteration around it. And the ANT basically technique zeroes us in on where that plume is, and then we drill and try to find the mineralization within that plume. And I can tell you that ANT works. It shows us alteration. Now, and so what we did, particularly at Hurricane, is we drilled one fence across a big ANT anomaly that we're calling Area A, and it's about 2.2 kilometers away from the Hurricane deposit, so quite far away, which is actually great that we're seeing plumes of alteration that far away, and helps to prove our model or our theory that there could be multiple pods of mineralization along strike, along the conductive corridor from Hurricane. We drilled one fence of holes into it, and then a couple of single holes that we stepped away from that fence. In each hole, we've hit the alteration that we were expecting, and encouragingly, so we start to get technical, and we have pictures of some of this work on our website of the holes themselves. But you can really tell by visually when you're getting closer to mineralization, you get You get the rock looks very bleached and very altered, and then when you get very close, and we're talking meters away from an ore body, you see this red hematite coloring in the core. We saw that in one of the holes, in hole 161. So we're extremely encouraged. And now we're working on plans for a summer drill program. We have 2 rigs at Hurricane. We're going to get back started in June. And we'll have some news out shortly on exactly what the nature of that program is going to be. But based on results to date, we're going to expand our drilling beyond what we had originally planned at the beginning of the year. So it's all very exciting.
Yeah, that will be one of my next questions. But before that, so are you seeing geochemistry with alteration that suggests you are near of a deposit at Hawk and the east of Hurricane? Did I get it right?
So the Hawk drilling, we definitely had alteration. The Hawk target area, the ant signature is much larger at Hawk. So our first goal was just to get inside of it, find structure, find alteration, and that was successful. I think what we would say at Hurricane, we got a lot closer. Hawk, we've got more work to do again because it's such a large area that we're testing. Hurricane is a smaller area, and I think it's safe to say based on what we see in the core there, we got a lot closer. We are still waiting for geochemical assay results. So those are in the lab right now. Unfortunately, they're going to take a couple of weeks from now, and the results from that work will inform where we drill next there. One thing that I would point out though, and that we hit home when we were on the site visit is we bought this project originally from Cameco. Cameco drilled a hole. Their last 2 holes drilled effectively under Hurricane. They missed mineralization by 37 meters on one side, 50, and then they went across. They went to the other side of the ore body, drilled back towards it, missed mineralization from 57 meters, and then sold the project. These things are very hard to find. They're very small, and so even one of the leaders, of course, in the industry and the experts in the Athabasca Basin drilled 2 holes and sold a project. It tells you that you just need to drill these things more, follow good science, and if the deposits are there, we think we're going to find them.
Good point. I want to touch a little bit on the ant survey. It's really interesting. And one thing from your press release really caught my eye, where it said that ant survey and results of the winter program have defined a large hydrothermal system that is typically associated with unconformity uranium deposits in the Athabasca. So for an average investor who is not a geologist, please short clarification about this sentence.
Yeah, I mean, well, so the deposits in the Athabasca Basin, they're formed, and the style that we're looking for, formed at the unconformity where fluids flowed through the unconformity and deposited uranium. And those fluids altered the rocks around them. But so you could have a very small ore body and a plume of this hydrothermal fluid came up above it. And in fact, in oftentimes, depending on how deep you are, they will go all the way to surface and they create this altered rock. And when you drill outside of it, you can tell you're not in an altered system. You drill it inside of it, you're in an altered system. But the actual deposit itself would be much smaller than the plume. So you have once you're in the plume, you're in a fertile environment, and then you have to vector in from there on where the mineralization may be.
Okay, that makes sense. So ant will help you to identify new targets for the summer drilling. Did I get it right?
Correct. And let me explain that in the context of what we just said. So effectively in the basin, the way people explore is they find a conductor corridor. That's the fault at the unconformity that you need. And that's the graphitic fault that the uranium needs in order to be placed. Historically, what they would do is they would drill fences along that conductive corridor. You can see the conductors in geophysics, and you drill fences maybe a kilometer apart, looking for the alteration signature, and then you narrow in around the alteration that you found. oftentimes you'd be drilling where there'd be no alteration. So if you had a technique that could show you along, say you were looking at, and you, on your property, you had 10 kilometers of conductive corridor, you drill all along it, hoping to find the alteration. With ANT, now we can run the ANT across that 10 kilometers, and it'll show you where the alteration is. So it immediately lessens or shrinks the search area and lessens the number of holes that you need to drill in order to start knowing where the alteration is. So it's a tremendous advancement in exploring for these types of deposits.
Yeah, that definitely helps.
It's not a silver bullet, but it's one of the tools in the toolbox to zero in on the area, on the most prospective areas on your property where those the alteration is, and then you need alteration for deposits.
Yeah, you mentioned the summer drilling, and it will be bigger than you expected, so to say. Do you have approximately how many meters will you drill this summer?
Well, let me talk in holes. I mean, we'd like to do 15 to 20 holes at Hurricane, and versus 6 or 7 that we did this year. We did have one hole that failed
Okay.
in this program, but so I would say somewhere around 20 holes. Again, we're the great thing about uranium, of course, is once you're in it, you know you are, because it's radioactive. So you know, if we're successful, and which we hope to be, we could even expand the program beyond there. But starting with our starting plan would be somewhere between 15 and 20 holes at Hurricane.
Okay.
And that would be to test primarily area A, but we also have 3 other areas, area B, C, and D. We're going to come up with more creative names shortly, but that's how we've defined them today. But there's other areas that we'd also like to test that showed up in the ANT survey. And we're running an additional ANT survey to the east of the current area that we covered. We did a smaller area to start, of course, right around Hurricane. But there's 9 kilometers of trend to the east of our survey area. We're going to run the ANT survey starting in May, in fact, over the entire block of ground at Laroque East.
Got it. What about the exploration plans for your other Athabasca projects for 2024?
Yeah, so we're going to continue to do some work on the other projects, running ANT on a number of them. We would like to elevate those projects to drill, a number of those projects to drill ready status, but we really have to focus primarily on Hurricane. The results that we've seen, and going to the project and talking to the geologists, we really have to focus there, particularly because of what's happening across the border. And I'm sure it's not lost on you. In the Cameco MD&A from earlier this year, they talked about the Dawn Lake project. That's, of course, the project right on the other side of the border. On their conference call yesterday or the day before, they talked about, they were asked specifically about Dawn Lake, and they talked about the success that they're having. They mentioned the Hurricane resource by name. So our real job is to grow our side of the border as quickly as possible before potentially something might happen between the two sides.
Okay, let's move a little bit to the south. You have announced U.S. mine restart plans with the advancement of the Tony M mine in Utah. How is that process going so far? Give us some update, please.
Yeah, look, it's going very well. We've got a team of people on the project right now. Right now, most of the activities around just upgrading some of the infrastructure. We have a generator to replace, some ventilation to add, etc. Everything that we're working towards. The next big milestone is actually opening up the portal. We expect that to happen in the summer. We will need to ventilate underground for a short while. Once it's open, then we can put people in. And it's really about, let's get back in the underground. We haven't been under there in over a decade. Map and sample from underground and create a mine plan. So we need to sequence out where are we going to mine first, second, third. How many tons are we bringing out? What's the plan? The mine plan. So that's what we'll do once we're underground there. What's amazing about Tony M, which hopefully won't be lost on the market, is as a past producing mine, all the infrastructure is there, all the underground development is there. In fact, 18 miles of underground development was done on this project. Only 1 million pounds has been produced in its past. We have 8.8 million pounds in our resource. We think there's more there, of course, and we're going to do some work on exploration as well. But that's a lot to get started with. And but the faces are open. We can, and this is what we're doing when we get underground, is going to the faces and putting together a mine plan.
Yeah, that was owned by Denison before, if I remember correctly. Tony M.
That's right. I mean, we bought it. So we bought it from Energy Fuels,
Yeah,
but
but
Denison, that's right. Denison, they bought it from Denison. So when Energy Fuels bought White Mesa, they bought they effectively bought the entire US portfolio from Denison, which
yeah.
included Tony M. And it was Denison that was mining it in the last go round.
Yeah, I remember that time too long on the uranium market, probably. So I remember those things. Phil, when can, let's say everything goes as expected, when can we expect first ore coming from Tony M mine?
I mean, realistically, towards the end of the year or early 2025. And one of the things that we need to do is make sure that that the mill is ready to take the ore. So we're working very closely with Energy Fuels on their timetable. They're of course mining at three of their mines right now and sending ore to the mill and then ultimately opening up. They're still, as far as I understand, still looking for second half of this year, and then we'll bring our material in sort of sometime after they start up, so they can get started on their own or work through the sort of growing pains and teething pains of restarting, and then we'll be another source of feed for them shortly after that. So let's just say first half of next year, just to be conservative. But that's not because of any restrictions on our ability to mine. We're fully permitted. Once we open it up, we're effectively ready to go. But it's really about timing it so that it works with the mill.
But Phil, what numbers are we talking here? I mean, the first year of production and ramping up after that. Do we have approximate numbers?
So look, we're going to come out with more specific numbers in the second half of the year when we put out
Okay.
our technical study. But let me just tell you, based on historic production rates, how
Yeah,
much.
just to get an idea of the size.
Yeah, it would be somewhere between 500 and 750,000 pounds that can come out of Tony M per annum. Obviously, year one, I mean, depending on when we start in year one, there will be a ramp up. So, but steady state, my goal would be to get the mine back to 750,000 pounds on a steady state basis after an initial ramp up year.
Okay. Do you have projected cost of completing all the necessary studies and work to bring this to production ready status?
Yeah, I do, again, that's not a number that I have today. That's a number we're working on. I think that, again, the point of Tony M and why it's such a great asset for this market is it's fully built, both the underground development, the surface infrastructure. Yes, there are some costs that it's going to take to, as I said, put a new generator in, buy some more fans, fix up some of the equipment on site. But we're talking in the order of magnitude of single millions of dollars, not tens and tens of millions of dollars.
Okay, that's fine. How is the staffing process going? Is there enough skilled personnel to complete all the work?
Yeah, look, it's good. In fact, we put out a press release a couple of weeks ago where we hired a new a mine manager. We took him out of the gold industry, and he's a tremendous asset to the company. We've got a very small but strong team, both in geology, permitting, and mining. We're using a lot of contractors, of course, and we'll put out some news shortly of our mining contractor that we're going to be working with. And listen, that is a challenge, but I think
Everywhere in the world. Yeah,
it's a
you're
challenge
not.
everywhere in the world. But I can tell you, and look, that hiring a gentleman out of the gold industry to come to uranium, one of the he likes the opportunity and what we're doing, but he's interested in uranium. So he thinks that this is the future, and of course he's incentivized by where the commodity could go and the success that we could have. So I think that the more success the better the commodity prices, the better the equities do, the easier it is going to be attract people. Particularly, we can bring them from some of these other commodities that may not be performing as well.
Okay. How is the production timeline for other mines looking forward, Daneros, Rim, and Sage? When do you expect them to go online?
Yeah, look, they would come in after, and I think that we're working on having teams that can move from mine to mine. So we'll get the teams trained up and efficient and productive at Tony M, and then move them to the other projects. But I could see that within 12 months of starting at Tony M, the other mines could be on as well. Remember, these are very small mines. Daneros, for example, historically was mined with half a dozen people. I mean, these are not large operations where you need hundreds of people. So it is something that could move very, very quickly. Again, once we have our team at Tony M trained up, moving them to the other projects, I think would be quite easy to do, and just in the order of months, not years.
Okay, I want to talk a bit on Coles Hill. That is very interesting property project you have in Virginia. For the ones who don't know, Coles Hill is the largest undeveloped uranium deposit in the United States with indicated mineral resources. Sorry if I will get this wrong. I believe 133 million pounds. And that is indicated, and it has inferred around 30 million, if I remember correctly. Although this is a historical estimate, so it's not a NI 43101 and it's not considered to be current. But nevertheless, we have the idea of the size here. Phil, what is the plan with Coles Hill? Any new developments on the project? And tell me more about the moratorium. And actually, my main question is the company at the moment involved in any legal process with the state on that matter?
Okay, so yeah, I mean, listen.
Sorry, five questions in one question. Sorry.
No problem. No problem. If I miss any of them, remind me. But
okay.
Look, I think just let me make a statement. So Coles Hill is a tremendous asset.
Yeah. Agreed.
And when we purchased it, and it's kind of the business plan is to have some call options in the portfolio, right? Things that could, if they could unlock tremendous value for the company. And this is one of them. We also have one in Quebec. As the Russian uranium ban started to get traction, in our view, it can't really be success. The country cannot be successful in sourcing most of its domestic supply of uranium domestically without including Coles Hill. So quite frankly, we've been in the background. We've been working with lobbyists and politicians in the state, engaging on all levels of government, local and on the state level, telling people about the project. We've had a number of site visits down there, just being more informational than sort of actually trying to push something forward, because we want to do this the right way. We're not trying to use a hammer here. We're trying to get people to buy into it, which we think that they ultimately will. I think that this ban actually now happening is a catalyst for us to go and talk in more specific terms with particularly the politicians in the state. We have a lobbyist group who's been working with us since the very beginning. We've been putting information in the right hands. But I think it's time to step up that activity, because the country, again, cannot produce enough uranium in a short period of time to meet their requirements without a Coles Hill. As you said, it's the biggest. And by the way, that 130 million in indicated and 30 million in inferred, you say it's a historic resource, and that's true. That's how we have to describe it. But it was originally calculated to 43101 standards. It's not as though the work was not done correctly and it's not up to standards. So those pounds are, in our opinion, very reliable. But for 43101 standards, we'd have to classify it as historic. There's also, interestingly, in that resource, there's a smaller, and when I say smaller, 60 million pound high grade domain to it. So that presents some very interesting options around underground mining, and particularly where there's sensitivities, and there's always sensitivities to mining uranium in any jurisdiction, but if there's sensitivities to surface mine, then one approach that we've been talking about internally and with some stakeholders is an underground mine. At 60 million pounds at 0.2%, you could still produce 4 or 5 million pounds a year, which would be larger than any other mine in the United States. Yeah. Every other mine is on the order of 500,000 to 1 million pounds, maybe 1.5 million, depending on how far out you look in terms of some of the hard rock mines in, say, New Mexico.
And this is, if I remember correctly, those are 2 deposits. It's not a 1 deposit.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. There's north and south, but they're effectively connected, and that's the fascinating thing about it. I mean, and you want to talk, you wanted to ask about the history of the moratorium, and the project was found in the 70s. The moratorium originally was put on in the 80s, and it was really put on in place to allow the state to put uranium mining regulations in place. It wasn't some kind of dogmatic opposition to uranium mining. It was just, hey, as a state, we have mines. We have a history of coal mining, of course, in Virginia, but we've never had a uranium mine. So let's put some regulations in place. And at that time, they looked to Canada, for example, and other parts of the states. Hey, what's a good regulatory framework to put in place? Unfortunately, in the 80s, uranium price went to very low, and the original company that discovered the project walked away from it. So there was no impetus to at that point, nobody was really saying, hey, let's put these regulations in place. So the moratorium just stayed in place because nobody was really trying to move the project ahead. What I would say, I mean, the 2 things I would say about that is, one, there's tremendous exploration potential. It never really, I mean, that's a lot of pounds. They didn't really need to do anymore, but I think that that's one angle of interest to us. But also, just the fact that since the moratorium is in place, mines and let's just say the Americas, let's say Canada and the US, mines have come online and operated safely. All the aspects of mining, tailings, water management, radioactive control, all of these things have been done safely. And so there's a great history to point the regulators to, and there's frameworks to point them to, ultimately to put those regulations in place. And you're not breaking new ground, and you're not putting a lot of risk into the system. But again, there's always opposition for uranium mining. It's basically the unknown of it versus actually taking a look at the science and seeing what's possible and how safe uranium mines can be.
Yeah, this is a huge value. This project is a huge value. I mean, it's a gigantic deposit. Plus, you said there is additional exploration potential on this project. And if I remember correctly, you bought this project for something like $35 million, right?
Yeah, that's right. We bought a company called Virginia Energy. That was back in the consolidated uranium days. We bought a company called Virginia Energy for $35 million.
That's excellent move, definitely. Phil, what are the plans and some update for Matoush, your Quebec project?
Yeah, look, Matoush is in a very similar category to Coles Hill. Tremendous deposits. I mean, in the indicated category, the resource grade is almost 1%. And while that's quite low compared to the Athabasca, that would be more than 10 times higher than the global average. And again, tremendous exploration potential there. We continue to engage in the local community. We did a work program last year. We're going to go back in this summer and do a follow-up work program. I think we bought this project out of bankruptcy after 10 years of nothing had happened on the project. So it's really important to be front and center with the community, show them that we're good stewards of the property. We're going to be engaging with them, particularly the First Nations, engaging with them, very much telling them everything we're doing before we do it, hiring locally, all of those good things. And so I think we're on a very good path there. I mean, obviously, you might have seen this. We did sign a exploration partnership with the Atha
Yeah.
in Saskatchewan. I think that's a great model for the kind of relationship we could have with the First Nations community in Quebec. And I mean, we're tremendous. Again, this is something that we're going to move forward slow and steady. We're not in a race here, because we understand that the ultimate value of that deposit could be, you know, a company maker on its own, and we're just going to do the right thing. Unfortunately, we have tremendous other projects that we can move forward while we're working in the background to unlock Matoush and Coles Hill.
What are your next activities with the Australian portfolio? And my question is there any chance that you spin those assets to another company? I mean, if you look at the map, maybe it doesn't make sense to have this. No, I believe that holding these properties, those are great properties, definitely. But maybe
Yeah.
to spin it in another in another company, is there any chance that you will do that?
Yeah, look, we're open to ideas. I think that we fundamentally believe that ISO as a company should be in Canada, the United States, and Australia.
Exactly.
We think that creates the best risk profile for any company in the space. And there's only one other company in the whole uranium space that's in those three jurisdictions, and that's Cameco.
Yeah.
What we want ultimately are projects that can actually be developed and move forward in a 3 to 5 year time frame. We have, and so we like those projects. There's tremendous exploration potential. There's tremendous value in those assets. Can they move in the time frame that we'd like them to? That's the question. And there are tremendous opportunities to potentially spin them out, divest them, sell them, other transactions. I think if you look at our track record, what we've done, and in the two companies that we've been involved with where we've divested assets, it's not just sell an asset and walk away. It's how can we take our assets, put them together with other assets, and make a relevant company with good management team that can finance, they will be financed and has a strategy. And so I think that if we do something there, it will very much look like what we've done before. If we make the ultimate decision that those assets can't move ahead on our time frame. Again, it's not about the potential of the assets. It's just we want to be a multi-asset producer. We know we have production near term in the United States, and we want to grow that. We know we have production. We know that Hurricane will be a producing mine, and that will be sort of over here. And something in the middle is what we're looking for. And if, you know, whether it comes organically from our portfolio or through other M&A, we're going to fill that middle hole.
Okay, just a short comment. Is there any new things with your Argentinian project? Any news?
Yeah, I mean, similar to Australia, Argentina would, I'd say, even fall one step out of the box. Those, you know, we want to be in those three top jurisdictions. We like those projects, of course, technically. We also think Argentina has a tremendous amount of potential. Increasingly, we're seeing lots of opportunities walk through the door in other jurisdictions in South America. We do so we think that something interesting can be done, again, on the lines of what we've said, what we've done before, which is 1 + 1 equals more than 2 with those assets. But we have a lot of patience, and we have a lot of belief in the country and in those assets. So we hope and think that we'll do the right thing with them at the right time.
Okay, Phil, is there any chance for US listing? I mean, on the major exchange, something in the works, maybe?
Yeah, look, we can't give any guidance on that in any kind of public forum, but I think it would be pretty safe bet to say that that's something that our company should do. We've done all the work. We've looked at our peers, and the peers that are listed in Canada and on a bigger exchange. So we have an OTC listing, of course, but on a proper exchange, they're trading multiple. Their trading volumes are much higher in the US, and ergo their valuations are higher because of that. So, although I can't say to you we are going to do that,
sure.
I think if you looked at it on balance, it makes a lot of sense. And so,
it would be a logical move, definitely.
It would be a logical move. That's the exact way of putting it.
Okay, you have a pretty strong equity holdings in Premier American Uranium as well in Atha Energy. Do you plan to hold those positions for now or maybe monetize that in the near future to help mine developments? What's the plan with
No,
those?
no, we absolutely intend on keeping those positions. In fact, Premier American is closing a financing next
Yeah.
week. We participated in that. We look at I mean, if you think about it, the business plan of how ISO was created in the first place. ISO was spun out of NextGen, and NextGen followed the money, kept backing the
Yeah.
company, and now has 35% of our business, and looks at it, as a great investment, but also a potential feed for other opportunities. That's how we look at Premier, and that's how we look at Atha. I mean, we can't, of course, sit here today and say that those assets will come back into ISO at some point, but we have our fingers on them, and we're very close to them. If Again, when we talk about our strategy of having multiple production assets in that short time frame, if something in those portfolios checks that box, and we've seen it before in the mining space many times where things have spun out and then brought back
Yeah.
in over time. So that's why we want to keep, and we have listen, we are extremely bullish on uranium over the long term. So having more pieces on the board, giving us exposure as a company, we're
Agreed.
very excited about that. So no, we're not going to monetize those in any short period of time. In fact, as I said, we're putting more money to work in those businesses.
Yeah, agreed. And definitely both companies, great management. So if you ask me, the right move and the right
Well,
answer.
no, exactly. I mean, look at who we were able to attract to become the new CEO of Premier American. You have a gentleman who's
Colin.
been in the uranium business for over a
Yeah.
decade, voting with his feet in a very and there was nothing about his current position that he didn't like, just like this opportunity better. So we couldn't be happier that he's involved in, and as a sign of support, again, we put more money in to support that vehicle.
Yeah, when it comes to money, how is your money? How is your cash position? You raised 23 million in February. Are you covered for now?
Yeah, we still have over $50 million, almost as much as $55 million in cash on top of the equities, which is over $20 million today. So we're in a great financial position. Obviously, the 23 million that we raised has to be spent in Canada on
Yeah.
exploration, and then so the balance of the $30 million, call it, can be spent in the United States.
Those were
Although, of course, that's
those
not our
were
budget.
flow through.
Flow through. That's right.
Okay, okay. Final question, Phil. News flow from the company in the upcoming period. From which project? When can we expect some news?
Yeah, look, so in fact, I think we should have some news next week on the US projects. On top of the development side, one of the great benefits of merging the two companies is we got access to this world-class exploration team. And so we started looking at exploration again in the United States. It's probably the first time in decades that anyone's actually done proper new exploration in the United States. And so we think there's a tremendous opportunity there. So some news out on that, regular updates on the US and progress that we're making there. Of course, the chemical results from the holes that we drilled in Athabasca this winter, restart of drilling, restart of the AMP program in May, restart of drilling in June, and then subsequent results and news around that.
Okay, that was Philip Williams, Chief Executive Officer for IsoEnergy. Phil, thank you for coming to my show and wish you luck with all your projects.
Thanks so much. Great talking as usual.